consistency is like a river. When you look at a river, it just flows. And there's moments where there's debris in front. There's like logs in front, and then there's like rocks in front. Find those friction points. See how you can fix it. Fix one thing for the week.
An important aspect to understanding consistency is it's not something you need to be doing every day. And in the beginning, your consistency might be 50-50, where you try something and it doesn't really stick, but then you come back to it later. And the more that you try it and the more you kind of figure out how you enjoy it and what really makes it work for you, then it will start to become something that's more consistent, which turns into a habit.
Consistency shouldn't be hard. If it's hard, something is wrong. Consistency should feel easy. Like love and consistency are intertwined. I love working out. I love doing Murph. Like people are like, you're crazy. I was like, I know, but I love it. I love doing hard workouts. Like I didn't know that. And if you're not consistent in some area, I would argue that maybe you don't love it. What are some things that you're seeing that's preventing them from making this more sustainable?
So,
you ever been in a situation where you feel like you have the knowledge to exercise and you have the knowledge to eat right, but you struggle with the most is your consistency? Today, I got one of my coaches with me. We are going to have a conversation on a practical way where you can build consistency for yourself so you can lose the weight, get healthier, all of the above. Madison, welcome back.
Hi.
We took you out from, I feel like I haven't seen you for at least
it's been a few
32
months.
weeks of episodes. So welcome back. I'm excited.
Me too.
So really quick, I tried shooting this yesterday. This is perfect timing because I tried to build consistency, but what I found was it's very difficult if I try to pile too many things on Saturday and Sunday. It just doesn't work out. So this is like a perfect example of how you can apply consistency to not just your health and fitness, but you can also apply it into your life. So thanks for saving my life. So I still get an episode out here.
Glad I could help.
So welcome back. Okay, so before we dive in, I wanted to kind of give a metaphor on what this topic is about. I think it's going to give people an idea of what consistency is like. But when you picture someone that's consistent, before we really dive into that metaphor, what do you picture someone that's very consistent?
I would say consistency is even if you're not perfect at something, you continue to keep doing it.
Yeah.
I mean, people say an 80-20 rule, but I would even say in the beginning it can be like a 50-50 rule, but it's something that you just do even when you don't want to do it and even if it's not perfect.
Yeah. I agree. You touched up onto one thing. They're constantly doing, right? If I picture someone that's consistent, is they're always consistently it's repeatable. And then the other side is they're producing something out of it. And the final thing that I wanted to add to this, I think it's going to be pivotal, is it's very easy for them, right? Consistency doesn't seem difficult. And a lot of times I think when someone comes up to me or yourself and like, hey, I just want to build consistency in this item, what they're really saying is, how can I make this so effortless that I continue to do it every single day, right? So the best analogy that I want to give is consistency is like a river. When you look at a river, it just flows, right? And there's moments where there's debris in front. There's like logs in front, and then there's like rocks in front. Maybe there's trash, and then the river starts to not become as flowing. So the first concept that I want to go over is the first thing you can do if you want to be more consistent is just to remove as much debris, distraction, whatever that's in front of that river so it can flow a little bit more. Now, to dive into this, I know I asked you just earlier, I was like, is fitness hard for you? And you were like, no, it's actually pretty easy. I want to dive in. I want to reverse, was it always easy? What type of things did you remove in your path to be able to be more consistent?
So I wouldn't say it was always easy. I would say that I was always an active person, but there was difficulties in it. Usually it was time, like a time constraint.
Yeah.
I hacked that down just by literally living at a gym now.
Yeah.
But when I didn't, for me, it was planning out my day, knowing that I had to have a workout in there somewhere.
Right.
And when was it going to be the best for me to fit it in? Sometimes it was 30 minutes. Sometimes I could actually get to the gym and work out. But it was knowing that if I moved, I felt better.
Yeah.
So that for me was like putting it as a non-negotiable in my day, knowing that if I did it, I would feel better and my energy would be better. no matter if it was 30 minutes or an hour.
I love how you brought up time. Time is one of the major like boulders in front of rivers. And one of the biggest things that I typically see people that why they don't have the consistency is they're just putting too much stuff in their plate.
Yeah.
Right. And sometimes that can be in the form of work. They're working 80 hours a week. So it's very difficult to throw fitness into that. Or maybe there's 20 hours of Netflix or social media in there. So reducing that amount can significantly give you the ability to put fitness in.
Yeah.
I remember, I don't know if you remember this, but for my social media, remember we did a practice. It was like, I'm going to put 45 minutes as my block.
Yes.
And Madison's going to be my password. So I'm not going to ask. So every time I get blocked, I have to text Madison, be like, what's my password? Because I need to unlock this barrier that I created
while
myself.
ago.
And it's still it's working
it
for me, and it's a really cool hack that you can do, and it's been in every reel and Instagram, is just go into your settings and just see how much time you're spending on social media or entertainment. And you're going to find that it's sad, but like when I started, even though I'm pretty healthy, I think I was spending 3-4 hours in a day. So we don't need 3-4 hours to get healthy. Right. So just being aware of that and then removing that as a friction point is so you start getting bored. Actually, that's what it feels like at first.
You do. Oh, I for sure. If I put a restriction on things and I just sit there and go, what can I do with my time?
Yeah.
And you have to actually think about things that you can do, or just being okay with being bored. I think some people need to practice that.
Yeah. When you unlock boredom, you're actually going the right path.
Yeah.
And that's where some things now it becomes a knowledge thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay. So what do I do with this boredom? So another concept here that you can do in terms of removing kind of debris is preparation. Right. A lot of times people, maybe you don't have ample amounts of time where you're bored, but you have opportunities where you can go to the gym. Right. So one thing my wife does is she always has a bag of workout clothes, workout deodorant, I don't know, underwear, water, protein. I don't know, like whatever girls put in that bag, it's ready.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you're a mom or if you have clients, sometimes you might have to pull an audible.
Yeah.
And if you don't have the items, luckily we're always in gym clothes, but most people are not on gym clothes. I think a simple hack that you can do is just set up a bag that's ready for you to work out.
I like that.
It's so simple, but it's just one of those excuses that people will say. They're just like, oh, I got to go home. I got to take a shower. I got to do all of these things.
Yeah.
And I think if you just set one of those things aside, it can be a massive impact in building your consistency.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I do have to ask, because you're you. Was it always easy for you to get to the gym?
Yeah. Oh, actually, I'm glad you asked that. No. And it's still very difficult sometimes. So one thing that I do notice, my consistency is a lot better if I just get it out of the way. So I notice, and you've probably noticed this before, the morning members are the same people all the time.
Yeah.
Literally. You can close your eyes, every person that's in that room.
Even their location.
Yeah, even their location. And then you go at night, it's kind of free for all.
Yeah.
Right? So I found I'm the most consistent at the beginning of the day. So consistency, for some reason, just from the 10, 15 years, I've noticed the most consistent people are always in the morning. Right? And that's just like one of the things. And consistency happens when you do it plenty of times and you have all these frustration points, which goes into kind of what we want to talk about, which is how do I remove friction? What's a pragmatic way? The first thing is like reflect from the week. What are all the things that made this thing so hard? And then you list that out. In the past, it was, oh, I have too many clients, or you know what? There's just too many, there's too much clutter. There's like physical clutter in my space. I can't train. That's why I'm always organizing, like get that out of the way. Or another one is like, I'm not prepared for my clients. So I'm like trying to prepare and then trying to do my workout at the same time. It just doesn't work. So that's happening over the course of 15 years. But I didn't reflect at all. So if you just reflect every single week and just fix one pain point, one friction point, and then observe what happens next week, you're going to start to become consistent. What are your thoughts around that?
Well, I actually just, Nick persuaded me to get the Best Me journal? But I got it and he talked with me about it. 'Cause that's one of the things that I need to do is reflection, because I don't reflect.
Yeah.
Like I had times where I did, because the question he always asks is, when you were at your best, what were the things that you were doing? Well, one of the things I was doing at my best was reflection, and going back over the week and thinking about, because what it does is during the week, it forces you to be more aware of the things that you're doing, because you know that you're going to have to reflect back.
Yeah.
It's like journaling your food and knowing you're to send it to someone. All of a sudden you're eating better because you know you're going to have to write it down and send it.
Exactly.
It's the same thing. So I'll pay more attention to when I'm on my social media. I'll pay more attention to when I'm watching Netflix. And when I don't reflect and there's nothing holding me accountable at the end of the week, I don't pay attention.
Yeah.
And so then it's been 2 hours and I'm on social media. I'm like, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Why am I just endlessly scrolling? So I do think that there's a lot of power into the reflection, because it forces you to have accountability over yourself.
Exactly.
Be more aware of it.
Yeah. It's funny because you reflect for your clients, but you rarely reflect for yourself.
Yes. Reflect for my clients every day after we have a workout. It's going through and looking at what they did.
Exactly.
Never for me.
Yeah. Hey guys, we are finally accepting students in our Weight Loss Academy. In this program, we are teaching you the skill set, the mindset, the tool sets to be able to not only lose weight over the next 12 weeks, but keep it off for a lifetime. If you find yourself struggling to shed pounds or you're regaining the weight after dieting, this academy is designed for you. Now, click on the show notes below so you can join our wait list, and you will be the first to know when our curriculum begins. Now, back to the show. Peace. Started implementing lately with a lot of nutrition clients. It was like, all right, what were some of the biggest friction points this week? And then sometimes they're just like, actually, this was a perfect week. I was like, awesome. Can we replicate it for next week? Or sometimes they'll come in and be like, oh, there was this deadline. There was this person sick. There was whatever that was. And then I'm like, perfect. So in the event that you have this occur, what are some things that we can do so we can still get this thing done?
Yeah.
And a lot of times I think a lot of my clients never even realized that friction points was part of the program. Friction points was actually some of the magic. That's what makes the program consistent. If we don't know what's happening throughout the week, how can we prepare and make this river flow better if we don't know what those things are? Mm-hmm. And what's cool is everyone has different friction points. And I'm still learning. I've been doing this for 15 plus years. And I'm still learning. I was like, wow, that's a friction point? I didn't know that was a thing. It's like, let's plan for that. So I'm always surprised. And then I'm using it for myself a lot of times, which is cool. Right? Okay. Yeah. So I want to make sure we do this because we got 17 minutes left. We're smashing this time frame. So point number 1 is consistency is like a river. Remove as much friction as you possibly can.
Yes.
Okay, we did time, clutter, maybe excuses can be some of those things that they can remove. And then set an action plan of just one thing that you can do to improve that. Yeah. I think that's important too. Don't try to change everything.
Yeah, and it's very important to remember it's one thing at a time. Because if you do more than that, 99% of people are going to fall so hard on their face because it's overwhelming. Yeah. So one thing.
You're creating more clutter for yourself again.
Yes.
Right? So
in a
one
different
thing.
way.
Beautiful. Okay. The next one is, the other concept is every big river started with a storm. And the way we were kind of explaining this was my dad would make us do free labor like every day. Right? So, and we would water plants, and we had like 30 plants. So you water plants every single day, you eventually get bored and tired. So what me and my brother started to do was we started to make these our own rivers. So we would make puddles of water, and then we would just fill it up, and then we would just cut these little rivers to fill up like maybe 3 or 4 plants, and at one shot. We started becoming efficient. But it got to a point where it would overflow, and it would start to create different rivers, right? So, and then the big rivers would get bigger, but then there was these random like paths that would just naturally carve into the rocks. And I use this analogy because when you like a storm is a challenge. Take on a challenge, right? We've done 75 hard challenge. We've done 30-day mindfulness eating challenge. We've done the plate method challenge.
Burpee challenge.
We've done 100 burpee challenge, right? We've done so many challenges, and while it's not like not many of them are very sustainable, each one of them created these new branches, right? And also fed the main branch. Like an example was 75 hard. Our coaches did 75 hard. We were like, let's do it. 2 workouts a day. Let's read. Let's drink water. A lot of those things, the one thing that I always did was I trained 5 days a week and I had 2 rest days. And then with this new thing, I started to notice that I actually feel better when I train every single day.
Mm-hmm.
So post 75 hard, I started to implement that, right? And then another thing was I also enjoyed reading. I would read books here and there, but I didn't know reading was a major way for me to reduce my stress. So that challenge also, now it's just like a daily thing. So I think a lot of times people refuse to take challenges because they know it's not sustainable. But what they neglect to see is these magical branches that happen that if you keep feeding it, it might be great, but there's going to be some other branches that are probably going to be drying out.
Mm-hmm.
So speaking of challenges, so that gives the audience an idea how this can be so impactful. Let's like maybe talk about 7.5 because we're on that challenge, which was one of the most difficult ones. You've done it before.
Yeah.
What was like some of those branches that is now part of your life? And then maybe some of those branches that were there for a moment, but now they're maybe just dried out.
Yeah, I would say the ones that have stuck with me is like the gallon of water. I don't get a gallon of water in every day, but I'm very aware of how much water I drink in a day.
Yeah.
Which that was really big for me, especially living in Vegas, because you can get really dehydrated really fast, especially with our job and what we do.
Yeah.
Reading, even though, again, I don't read every day, I do read a lot more now.
Yeah.
And it made me more interested in reading because I stopped reading. Once you're done with school, if you're not like an avid reader anyways, you just kind of stop. So it allowed me to invite reading back into my life. So that was a really big one that I enjoyed. What didn't stick for me was the, what is it called?
2 workouts?
Yeah, the 2 workouts. Only because when I did 75 hard both times, the first time when I did 75 hard, I did 2 actual workouts a day. And it was very draining for me. Like my body did not have an easy time keeping up with it.
Yeah.
So the second time I went through it, I would do a workout and then I would do some type of like yoga, walking my dog. I counted it as a workout for 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Mobilizing for 45 minutes. Things that I wouldn't normally do every day that I added in that were still something that took time out of my day that I had to be very aware of and present when I was doing.
Yeah.
But made me feel good by the end of the day and not completely drained and exhausted. So, and that stuck with me.
That's good.
That portion of it, doing the walks, doing yoga, mobility. I do that, something in that realm every day for my body.
And you still do yoga now. I see you out there doing outside stuff just to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And here's what I mean. Madison at first made this thing extremely difficult. And then all of a sudden she found a way to make it even easier and flow.
Yeah.
Which is kind of, we touched up on that point. It's the same for me. I was doing 2 workouts too because all our coaches were just like, let's do 2 hardest workouts ever. And we did that for a certain amount of time. And I started to notice the outside workout was one of my most peaceful times. I never did an outside workout. Now I regularly run outside. I regularly ruck outside. I regularly work out outside because I feel at peace. There's nothing. It's just nature. It's just you. I never thought I'd be a nature person. I thought those people were weird. But now it's been such an element.
Yeah.
And I do it not because of any fitness related. I just feel good. Right? So I think part of knowing consistency and being consistency is following what good feels like.
Yeah.
And sometimes you need to take on a challenge for you to even see that branch exists.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I think like taking on intentional challenges is a major benefit to this, right? It's going to be there for a season, but you're going to take some of that stuff and it's going to bleed into what you regularly do.
Yeah. And like the first time I did 75 hard, if you ever want to ask my husband about it, he will give you a spiel about how miserable I was. Because I was miserable. Like I thought every day, all these things I have to do. And if I mess up, I'm going to screw up and it's going to be awful. Have to do all these. And it was very overwhelming. But the second time I went into it with a better mindset of I'm going to do this for what my body needs. And it was much better. And we can talk about that and the whole, not having the negative thoughts. But that's what it was for me, was when I switched my mindset of going from it being miserable to being something that's beneficial for me. It was so much easier and it was so much more fun.
Exactly. Okay, I love it. So let's touch up on that.
Okay.
The whole negative talk, because it's our third point. Before we go to the third point, let's put some practical stuff because this is supposed to be a practical guide. Okay, so step one on this of creating a storm for yourself is just take on a challenge. It could be a 5K challenge. It doesn't have to be something so difficult like 75 hard, right? It can just be, you know what? I'm going to walk for 30 days straight. Wherever you are in your journey, just make sure it's challenging. I think an element of challenge is there might be a chance that you might fail.
Yeah.
If you feel like you're 100% going to accomplish the challenge, I would argue that it's not a challenge, right? So I would choose something that you know there might be a chance you might fail, and that's okay too, because in that failure is where we start to reflect. And in your case, you've experienced some failure was just like it was too draining, even though you accomplished it, but the failure was draining. Isn't that interesting? And then you reflected and you're like, the next time I do this, I'm going to do this in a way where it feels effortless. Sometimes that's what you're going to experience throughout this. So step one, take on a challenge where you might fail. And if you do fail, reflect on it, improve it. How can I make this thing easier or more exciting or more joyful? I think is like the biggest thing when you're going through these storms. And these are intentional storms. These are not like life storms. These are like you're doing it on purpose.
Yeah.
Okay? Because the other ones can be beneficial too, but I want to talk about like intentional storms.
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about the final point. The first point was remove the debris in the river. The second point was take on a challenge, build a storm. The final one is stop swimming upstream.
Yeah.
Right? So there was a situation where this was the first time I've been to the U.S. We went to San Diego, and I was fearless back then. But I tried to swim like as far as I could as a little kid to the buoy. And every time I would swim, I would look up and I felt like I got further back. Right? And I would keep swimming again. I was like, oh my gosh, that buoy is moving. And then I look back, I'm right by the sand. And that's what it's, so why we say that the swimming upstream, that's a metaphor for negative self-talk. A lot of times I think people think they have to hate themselves so much to be fit, but I would argue that you can hate yourself to fitness, but it's hard to sustain yourself at that level. Right? So I want to talk about negative self-talk really quick because you said you've had some negative self-talk and how
never.
has it?
I'm so positive.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. So what are some things that you're seeing maybe with yourself or maybe with your clients that's preventing them from making this more sustainable?
So along with the self-talk, it's also the belief of it. So like when you have negative self-talk and you honestly believe the things that you're saying, it stunts you from being able to change.
Yeah.
So examples for me, I mean, if we want to go back to the 75 hard thing, that was me having a miserable time because everything in my head, it was supposed to be hard. And so I made everything hard by telling myself that everything was going to be hard and I wasn't going to enjoy it and it was going to suck for 75 days. And there was days where I cried about it. There's days where I thought that I failed. And I got through it, but by the end I was like, why did I do that? Like I was like, yes, I'm done. But it was like, cause I'm done, not because I felt like I accomplished something.
Right.
And so that for me was a big one. But then you also see negative self-talk with people like about their weight and how they feel about themselves. And when they look in the mirror and
or their triceps.
Yeah, their triceps.
They're like, what's this?
What is it?
Yeah.
But that's something, especially as a personal trainer, that you see a lot is the negative self-talk about your body, and not having any kind of self-love, not being able to see any positive in who you are and who you've become. And that, I mean, yes, like you said, you can technically move forward even with that mindset, but it's way harder.
Yeah.
And me personally, what I've noticed is it's easier for men to have the like hatred self-talk and still see benefits. It's a lot harder for women to have the negative self-talk and still see benefits. And I think it's because women tend to give up easier if they don't see something right away because they have a negative self-talk.
Yeah.
And so then it's not like you're being consistent with it.
Yeah.
And so you don't see any change.
Right.
So those are things that I've noticed with it.
Yeah, actually, now that you bring that up, I do see my men do negative self-talk in a humorous way almost.
Yeah.
You know, and then women, you can tell that they're honest about it.
And it like drags them down. Like
it drags them down.
Yeah.
And one practical way, my wife does this really well. She asked me, she was like, what do you do when they have negative self-talk? I was like, I don't really do anything. I just kind of wait until their narrative starts to change. But what she does really well, she pulls them back. It's like, what did you say? Let's just write that down, right? It's like, I'm fat. It's like, okay, now let's just say you said that to someone that you really loved, like your kid, you're fat, or like your wife, you're fat. Would you say that? Would it pass the I love you test? And you're like, heck no. Then I would consider adjusting that narrative, because that narrative, it should be illegal, things that you say about yourself sometimes.
Yeah.
Right? So, and a lot of times I think that it does a lot more damage long run, right? You might get there pretty quickly telling yourself that, but at the end of the day, it's like you're punishing yourself for something wrong with you.
Yeah.
Right? What if you just flipped it? You can still do the same actions, but with a different feel. It's like, I deserve to see my grandkids.
Yeah.
I deserve to feel amazing in my swimsuit, right? Like that's a different type of feel. And I think there's a different set of actions. And I think those like love and consistency are intertwined. I love working out. I love doing Murph. Like people are like, you're crazy. I was like, I know, but I love it. Right? I love doing hard workouts. Like I didn't know that. And if you're not consistent in some area, I would argue that maybe you don't love it. And the biggest reflection is to find that love component. For some, it's going to be CrossFit. For some, it's going to be yoga. For some, it's going to be nature. For some, it's just going to be, you know what? I like playing sports. So if you are missing that consistency, like we said, you might be hating yourself in that process. You might be doing something that is very temporary at that state.
Yeah, it's hating yourself or hating what you're doing. People will, that's the hard part about social media is people will say like, you have to do it this way. Mm-hmm. So then you start doing it that way and you're like, God, but this is miserable. It's like, well, you don't have to do it that way. There's all these other ways that you can do it. Mm-hmm. And I would even say, like, if you're someone that's never been active, start with walking.
Yeah.
You might find that walking is actually enjoyable for you and you can get outside and you can get sun and it's kind of peaceful. And like, it doesn't have to be going on, 5K runs right away. It doesn't have to be finding a CrossFit gym right away. It can be something that's way more simple where you don't really have to technically leave the house, but you're close to home. Mm-hmm. So there's benefits to starting small and then building on it. You don't have to go 110% nosedive into something.
100%.
Yeah.
I want to add to this because we had a conversation just like 20 minutes ago. But we were talking about when you speak to yourself differently, people treat you differently. Mm-hmm. And a scenario that came up was when we go to parties, and they offer us donuts and treats. There was a version of me that was like, oh, I can't. I'm on a diet. And they would respond like they would try to save you. They were like, oh my gosh, you're okay, dude. Let's have one donut. But then I've also had scenarios where I'm like, no, man, I'm good. They don't save you. Like, why do you think that is? One, you have this internal narrative is like, no, I'm good. Like, that's not what I do. And I love myself too much. Or as opposed to like, I hate myself. I'm on a diet. I'm fat and I got to take care of myself. And then they respond differently.
Yeah. And I even get when I do that, because if you know me, you know that I have a very healthy eating habit, and it's for very good reason. When people ask me if I want something and I say, no, I'm good. And they're like,
Yeah.
well, you on a diet? I'm like, no, I just don't want it.
Yeah.
And as soon as you say that, it's a different,
They don't say
stop.
anything.
Yeah.
They
They let it go. But if you're saying, oh, I'm on a diet, usually there's almost fear behind it,
Yeah.
or it's like, like this really sucks and I have to say no. And so people will feed off of that and they'll know, oh, dude, that means like maybe you just break
Yeah.
it. Like you can just have one. You can have like a cookie or whatever. And so then you start to feel kind of that pressure, and then it's harder to be in the space that you're trying to be in.
Yeah. An indication if you have positive self-talk is how the people are responding when you have those circumstances.
Yeah.
Because I don't have those social pressures. In fact, they feel the social pressure. It becomes the opposite now.
Mhm.
They start to question themselves. He's like, I'll have whatever he has. And I was like, oh, you didn't have to do that, man.
Mm-hmm.
He's like, because here's how I perceive it. They think I'm like drowning and they need to throw a boat to pull me into safety.
Yeah.
But
when
then
you're on a diet.
When you're on a diet.
Yeah.
But when you're on a lifestyle, they're like, man, this guy's like living on a beach somewhere. He's living on a beach somewhere, and I want to go there. Right? They're like, you're living the dream. I want to go where you're at. I'll have whatever he's having. I'm not going to drink alcohol today. I'm just going to have a Pellegrino.
Yep. Well, and in my mind, it's if you have love and respect for yourself and people can see that, then they're going to have love and respect for you in some manner.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you respect yourself enough and you love like what you're doing and the path that you're on in any way, shape, or form, and you radiate that to others, people aren't going to try to press you. They're not going to see you as someone that's drowning that they're trying to save.
Exactly.
And so there's a lot of power to that.
It's huge.
Yeah.
Okay, so you guys heard the 10-minute clock. Let's wrap this up really quick. So just to summarize what we talked about, consistency shouldn't be hard. Actually, consistency should feel easy. If it's hard, something is wrong. And that wrong things, that how you can fix some of those wrong things is one, find those friction points, see how you can fix it, fix one thing for the week. That's step one. Step two is the storm. Mm-hmm. Go into an intentional challenge. Don't be afraid, and just make sure the element of challenge is there's a probability that you might fail. And then again, reflect on that and how you can improve and what things you like. Chase joy as opposed to hate, right? And then the final thing is just identify your talk. Does it pass the I love you test? Does it pass mine is, does it pass the Lucas test? If I would say that to Lucas, I would be happy about that. If the answer is no, then I would put that on a piece of paper and then see how you can adjust it. And that's going to be the hardest work for you in terms of building consistency. Because I think if you just do that work, your actions change.
Yeah.
Right? We don't even have to worry about the action plans on top of the actions. If you just change the narrative, your actions change. Isn't that crazy? Mm-hmm. Do you want to add anything before we sum this up?
Yeah, actually, I think an important aspect to understanding consistency is it's not something you need to be doing every day. Mm-hmm. Consistency is not, we talked about this earlier, but there's a whole 80-20 rule. Mm-hmm. And in the beginning, your consistency might be 50-50, where you try something and it doesn't really stick, but then you come back to it later. Mm-hmm. And the more that you try it and the more you kind of figure out how you enjoy it and what really makes it work for you, then it will start to become something that's more consistent, which turns into a habit. Mm-hmm. So don't go into it thinking that I'm going to do it every single day this week and it's become consistent. I'm going to do it all the time. Right. Because then if you fail, a lot of times that you'll fall off the tracks and you'll just give up on it. Yeah. So being aware that in the beginning when you try something new, it's probably not going to stick because you're still trying to figure out how can I actually enjoy it? How can I make this something that fits into my everyday, because I'll try something and it will take too long or I won't enjoy it or there's something that's off about it. And so I kind of put it away and then I come back. But every time I come back to it, I change it a little bit until it becomes something that I enjoy doing, because then it becomes something that I can now make consistent. So good. Yeah. So don't give up just because you tried it once and you didn't like it. Tweak it. and see if you can try it again. And don't worry if it's not every single day. Don't worry if it's only once a week for the first couple months of you trying it out. Because eventually, if you keep doing it, it will become something that's consistent in your life.
I love it. Guys, you heard Coach Madison. Take those notes down. Do me a favor. If you found something super valuable, shoot us a comment. Tell us which one that you gravitated towards. Or maybe if you have a question, put it on the comments. We'd love to answer it, especially with all our coaches. Hopefully we can give you guys value. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Sorry I didn't post it today. It'll be for Tuesday. Consistency. I'll see you guys later. Peace out.